And we are now live. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to FBS Chat. And today we have the lovely Carey Glass and one of my favourite people, Hout. And I'll tell you why she's one of my favourite people. She was one of the major influences in my life when I first was introduced to the solution-focused approach. Whether she realises it or not, she's a brilliant mentor. And I will never forget our conversations at Brief Summer School. So welcome to both of you. I'm hoping that Mark will be joining us in a minute. But whilst he's trying to log on, Harry, Joe's not here, so I'm going to ask the first question. How did you come across the solution-focused approach?
I had moved from Australia to the UK and I was coaching, and I was thinking to myself, I mean, Australia's now changed, but in those days you could be a bit more eclectic. And I was thinking, this is a different society, and I think I need to be much clearer in describing what I do, and maybe I should have been anyway. And so I spoke to a friend who was a counsellor and said, can you send me to some sort of brief coaching, not knowing that was a term? And I'll brief therapy, I said, and I'll work out how to translate it to coaching. But I need something that's, brief, because that's the world I live in. And she sent me to brief. And I did 4 days with Evan. And after about the first 2 hours, as happens to so many of us, I thought, this changes everything.
Yeah. Wow.
And it did. And it did. And then Evan could see that, I was the only organisational person working with all of the therapists with who, of whom I was in awe, because they're dealing with, very serious stuff. And Evan said to me, the first Solutions in Organisations conference is happening in Bristol, and you might like to go along. And I did. Wow. And therein is the beginning of the whole story. So it was just in a way, it was a fluke.
Yeah.
But it did change everything. And I remember in the beginning, I was very stuck on the idea of it being not scientific, and that it would reject science. Those naive things you go through until you understand. And I was at the Interlaken conference, where I had the opportunity to meet Insu, never met Steve, and we were sitting outside, and I said this to her in my very naive early days, and she said to me, but science is very important. And she couldn't, she either got it and decided not to go there, was probably got it, decided not to go there, that I hadn't sorted out that these are, paradigms for different things. And then it was sort of, I remember that so well. You're so confused in the beginning, or I was anyway. And even though this is where you want to be, it's so mind-boggling, the shift and the implications of the shift, that it takes quite a while to sort yourself out.
Yeah. Because you were a psychologist by training, weren't you?
Yes, and I was a psychologist. Actually, my training was at Monash. Mm-hmm. And it was
That's a university in Melbourne, for the people who are not familiar with, with that.
Yeah, and it was a very rats and stats department, very, very scientific department.
Okay.
And my master's degree was a 3-year full-time piece of research in the hemispheric lateralization of face recognition.
So very important. Yes. Yeah.
And interesting about important, because one of the reasons I left academia was because I thought, when is this actually going to make a difference? And I thought, I've got to be in the real world.
Aha.
So it was a very ratsy statsy department, an excellent department. And I don't know why I'm talking about this, but my honours degree was in psycholinguistics, which I adored. And it was cognitive theories of word recognition, with one of the people who came up with one of those major theories. And it's really interesting because, I think one area of psychology leads to another. And while in our world we might question cognitive approaches and have moved on, and the whole, computer analogy stuff, there's stuff in there that's really powerful. So
Yeah.
the fact that in terms of what is it on your phone or on your computer where it looks for the word and corrects it, the term autocorrect, right?
Okay.
The whole autocorrect actually comes from cognitive psychology and word freak, because one of the models of how you
Really? Okay.
Yeah, 'cause one of the models of how you process words is a cognitive model. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Mark.
Right. Mark's camera wasn't working before, but Mark has joined us now.
Hi, Mark.
you,
Nice
Mark.
to meet you.
It's
We're
still
just
not.
talking
It's
about-
still not working.
Still not working. Okay.
We can see you.
Yeah.
So one of the cognitive models of how your brain processes words is that they're listed somehow in terms of the frequency with which you use them. That led, and so all of the psychology was there of word frequencies, which are the words we use most for languages. And that then got transported into telephones and computers.
Amazing.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and it sounds to me as if you were back in the day, were already working on subjects that we now see in the whole microanalysis ideas that contribute to thinking about solution focus.
Yeah, is psycholinguistics. I suspect to give you a better answer. I did do the microanalysis course. Yeah, it's different. It's different because that really is about the interaction of language as it happens, rather than cognitive processing. But yeah, language has always fascinated me, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
can I ask you a little bit? Sorry? No, go ahead.
You go.
Oh, I was just, I thought it was very interesting what you said, coming from degrees in psychology and then looking for something that was brief and making the switch within 2 hours. And I remember on a chat that it was Jonas Wells who asked a fascinating question. He asked, and I would like to ask the same question to you, what did you recognize at that moment that made it possible for you to make that switch and think, this is what I need to know more about? What did you recognize about what you'd done or learned previously?
Yeah, my second job, we lived in Perth where I did, my first job was computer programming. That was a bad idea. Anyway, we were in Adelaide and I was doing, I think back. I was working as a psychologist in a place called the Julia Farr Centre, which was the largest, essentially, nursing home for, it wasn't a nursing home, but essentially it was, or hospital might be better. Anyway, it was before deinstitutionalisation, and it was the largest centre in South Australia for people with severe physical disabilities, and it had the head injury service. And I was doing all sorts of head injury programs, which I didn't approve of. But anyway, it was all at the time of tokens and timeout rooms and what have you. And I was responsible for a ward for people who had the most severe of head injuries, who we would have said had no attention span, but then I would question all of that now. And there was a guy there. So they're full of they're full of young men who, drove too fast on motorbikes, that kind of thing, and never recovered. Yeah. And there was a guy there who stayed with me forever, who at the time I, took home with me in my head. And his behaviour would have been described clinically, professionally, as like this. He has no attention span. He yelps. This is true. He yelps all the time. He cannot sit still. He is physically aggressive. We put him in the timeout room. He flushes the toilet constantly. And that was him. And he didn't have a lot of English because he was Polish.
Yeah.
And one day
Mm-hmm.
on this ward, which is where they lived their lives as a hospital, which actually is what it took me into organisational psychology, because I did the strategic plan to change the whole place. But anyway, that's another story. There was a party. It was one of the staff's birthday. And they lived their life on this ward, and there was a room which was the dining room for all of these people who were living their life in this essentially a hospital. And it was decorated, and the lights were dimmed, and the balloons were up, and there was birthday cake and lovely whatever for birthday, and beautiful music. And Chris, who nearly gave his surname, sorry, Chris, who would otherwise have can we come out for us? No, we can't. All right, I'll talk to you after. Who otherwise would have never sat still for maybe more than 40 seconds.
Yeah.
Sat for 45 minutes.
Wow.
Didn't he?
Hey.
Didn't this, didn't that.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed me profoundly.
It changed you. What happened in your head?
Well, I realized whatever we were doing was wrong. Because this man could sit and could concentrate and could enjoy himself when the atmosphere was right around him.
Okay.
So I just knew that whatever we were doing wasn't right. At the time, I thought maybe it's about, because it was a party, maybe it's about emotional paths to recovery, and maybe I should do a PhD in emotional paths to recovery. Mm-hmm. But what happened was I was approached to do a little 8-week piece of research on deinstitutionalization.
Yeah.
Under the assumption by the person who asked me that, of course, we're not going to do this here because people cannot live in the community because they won't be safe and da-da-da-da.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And I thought, this is interesting. This is actually a way of providing alternative ways of living. I didn't believe in wholesale deinstitutionalization because if someone had lived there for 30 years and wanted to stay, to chuck them out was equally cruel. And it just happened that there was a foundation for the organisation, and and the chair of the foundation was around the corridor for me. So I just knocked on his door and said, look, I've been given this piece of work, which I think is very interesting and I want to do it.
Yeah.
But I need to know where the boards sit.
Yeah.
And he absolutely, we chatted and I said, this is how I see it and why I see it. And he said, this is how we see it as well. And so I built a strategic plan that led to options, living options. Okay. And it went from there. So at that point that happened, and then I had children and life takes over, and I did organisational stuff and moved to the UK and whatever. And but I knew I hadn't found what was right. In terms of, I mean, I was doing organisational work. I wasn't doing people work in that sense. And I went to brief, and 2 hours later I had my answer.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's how it came about.
Can you recollect what it might have been that Evan was talking about, that sort of...
Now, how do we start? I mean, because you're doing what's working rather than what's not. I mean, he was fantastic. And it was the beginning of the process, and he was getting us to do little exercises in pairs. And I suspect, thinking back, I think the exercise was a what's working exercise.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, well, what was working was that party, and here's a way of having conversations that enable it.
Mm-hmm.
And
wow,
it was that, and it just you just see life completely differently. Although my story with Insu tells you it took me a long time to work it out, even though I saw it.
Oh, but isn't that part of the fun, that this is a lifelong journey and that you never stop learning?
That's
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an amazing thing that you think about it every day, which actually is the segue into talking about
Yeah.
the thing that I've been watching with delight, if you're happy to go there, about the management of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the work I do in organisations, and I did this with Highways England, and I wrote an academic article that can be found in Interaction, but I did a piece of work with them about complexity.
Yes.
and making change through using a complexity model with Highways England North. It was the major road projects group.
Mm-hmm.
And complexity and solutions focus sit very happily together.
Yep.
And I found a book which I love by two authors called Olsen and Ouyang, who are really good.
We'll need that one in the chat later on, but let's remind ourselves, Asia.
Yeah. And they, hold on. They are, profound complexity theorists who worked out how to bring a model into organisations. I read their book, was bowled over, took the model, and have been thinking about it and working with it ever since.
Really?
And COVID is this extraordinary example of having to work in complexity with constant change. Yeah. And their model fits beautifully. And so I just wondered, or we could just chat as we were about anything and everything, whether you would be curious about what their model is and how it works with COVID as an example. And then we could look at where it hasn't worked and what that says about the model, if you're interested. And if
my next question would have been anyway, what fascinates you most at the moment? And it sounds like
Mark, are you happy to proceed with this?
Yes, I came from my phone now to my computer. Now it's working.
Yay!
Good.
Mark, do you want to quickly introduce yourself to Carey, because we didn't have time, and then Carey can proceed?
Yeah. Well, I'm Mark Maat, living in the Netherlands, social worker from education, and I was always fascinated about people's stories, and especially about their stories, where they're going, where they came from, and where they're going. And, and I was first introduced to solution-focused when I was a family supervisor.
When you were doing what supervising?
Family supervisor.
Okay.
Working in youth protection. And there was this book from IMSO. I think the first book I read about family solution focused. And at the time I was so busy with my work, I put the book aside and didn't look at it for a long time. But and then afterwards, when I got out of family supervision, then
you looked at the
was
book.
Interested in this. And now I have loads of books about solution focus. And like you said, it's a daily thing, It's it's in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And how lucky are we?
I think so, yes. But it's not always easy when you're working inside organizations, because
I'm starting to discover this, because moved back to Melbourne and need to make a living. And while I build my business, I'm doing work in an organization where all these things that I hear therapists talk about, of forms you have to fill about what's wrong, and suicide checks with people who are perfectly fine because you have to, are becoming part of my life.
We've also got, which we can hopefully either Mark or Pout can prompt later on. So I'd be interested in regards to public sector organisational change, impact on staff morale.
I've done a whole bunch of work on that.
So do you want to talk about your COVID work first, and then go on to this, maybe?
Yes, but I don't know if this person knows about solutions focus, but I did a huge piece of work in one of the cooperative groups in the UK. They had a facilities management group called Synchro, and this is also published, so I can talk about it, who'd gone through, so they were their only, if you know the UK, the cooperative is huge, and they were the only part of the organisation that wasn't retail facing, and so they decided that they probably didn't want to hold on to it. It was facilities management. You know, they looked after McDonald's or whatever. And they'd gone through a financial restructure, and morale after the restructure, where lots of people left and what have you, was really low. Mm-hmm. And I coached the general manager. This is also published. Well, that person can ask me for the article and I'll send it. In 6 sessions is all we did to transform morale and prepare it for sale. And it was 6 solution-focused coaching sessions that were asking questions like, if morale was better, how would you notice? Very, very simple solutions-focused coaching, because it was at the beginning of my process. And it worked. And we described, you know, what general manager might do in great detail. And I can go into it. But it was a very simple solution-focused coaching process that transformed everything. Yeah. And he just went and did it. Okay. He's solution-focused trained, or she, and signs of safety trained. Okay. So, yeah. So we did that detailed description of what better would look like. And one of my very favorite examples was, this guy was on the 2nd floor, the general manager, and the engineers were on the 6th floor. And he was on the 2nd floor with the salespeople. And he thought of them as, you know, enthusiastic doers and go-getters. And the 6th floor were engineers, and engineers are often quite introverted people. One shouldn't make generalizations, but they often are. And as we were talking about this, he realized, he didn't really know them very well. So after our first session, he went up that evening when they'd all gone to have a look at what they had on their desks. You know, classic car calendars and golfing things and whatever they had. And he just went up and got to know them. It was one of the smallest things he did on the 6th floor. Yeah.
Wow.
And they got to know each other, and they were full of fantastic ideas of how to bring in business. And of course, the morale improved as business improved, but as they also started interacting more. And they established a golf tournament for all of their clients that got them all sorts of new business. So he did, it was just all sorts of things. And my other favorite story was on the 2nd floor was Co-op Funerals, and they were moving out. And he said, well, when Co-op Funerals move out, we'll bring down the 6th floor, and that will make a difference. And I said, well, what difference will it make then that it can't make now? And it was that interesting thing about waiting for something to happen. I said, what will you do then? He said, oh, well, then we'll be able to mix them up in seats, and they'll get to know each other, and da-da-da-da. And why can't that happen now?
Yeah.
You know, so it was just, also, he was a wonderful man. In fact, we hadn't spoken for years, and we spoke a couple of months ago. It was really lovely. So it was just a lot of good description. And he learnt, very bright guy, and he learnt so quickly. And they'd had a problem with invoicing, and that they could not solve. And he, without me, nothing to do with me, he'd already learnt how to do this stuff. He went to his team and he said, where does invoicing already work? And they said, yeah, and then he said, how can we adapt it? I mean, and invoicing doesn't sound like a big problem to solve, but this one was massive and very significant in terms of turnover of money.
Yeah, can cost a lot if you haven't got that sorted.
And they solved it. And they solved it by him saying, where does it work? So it's probably that story done.
Brilliant. And I'm sure that in what you would like to talk about, and what you did with, what's that different, Olsen
and Yang. It's there.
Oh yeah.
And it's called, I can't remember what it's called, but you'd find it. It's something about organisational change.
Absolutely. Facilitating organisation change what Google came up with in the meantime.
It's a great book. So I've taken their model.
Brilliant.
And applied solutions focus to it because they work very beautifully together. And solutions focus actually really enhances their model hugely. And so I want to talk about it, and you'll see that, and we can bring in the solution focus bits in terms of COVID.
Yes,
because
please.
This is really what has been occupying my thoughts in trying to analyze what I see.
I think it is the question at the moment in organizations, isn't it? How are we going to come out of this period? What are we keeping? What lessons have we learned? So yes, please go ahead.
Yes, yeah, and I've done a couple of articles on that on Medium, which I've mentioned. Okay, so I'll tell you their 3-stage model, and you can apply it to the Netherlands and to the UK, and where in the UK it's certainly been messier, but we can analyze why using the model.
Okay.
And this is their, to me anyway, this is my simple take on their model. So what we have are organizations who see, so for me, here's why it's important to me. Because we live in a world of change. People need to adapt faster. But if you ask the C-suite, that's an Australian term. If you ask the leadership, the chief executive,
the C-suite, beautiful. I love it.
Operational officer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to learn that when I came to Australia. What's a C-suite? Anyway, so if you ask the executive team for their model of an organization, they still really only have in their heads a traditional hierarchical model that's flat.
Yep.
But not much else.
Yeah.
And as much as we talk about agile and people trying to take agile out of IT, for good or bad, and shouldn't necessarily be that way, it's a set of processes. Yeah. And it isn't, and a chief executive or a leadership team, or all of us really, need a quickly grabbed concept that will then allow the organization to adapt that isn't based on this old hierarchical model.
Yep.
So they've got that. And it's got 3 elements I'll take you through. One's called, the names are terrible, but doesn't matter. One's called a container. That one's not so terrible. One's called transforming exchanges, and one's called differences.
Okay.
Or significant differences.
We like that one, don't we?
So rather than thinking like this, they have this idea of a container. Yeah. That you think of your organization or your team or whatever it is, could be your family, as a container. And it's a container that is permeable in the sense that the container can change. Right?
Okay.
And the container, and I did make myself some notes. I know there's something I wanted in particular to say. Okay.
Right.
In terms of COVID, I've just got it out. So the container sets the boundaries of what becomes your self-organizing system, right? So in a traditional system, we think of it as top-down, and then when we have a project, we decide it from top down and we break everything into small bits, etc. And on that assumption of working that way, we are assuming the opposite of complexity. We're assuming that things are predictable by virtue of working that way, that we can control things, which we can't, and that will be efficient, which it isn't. Right? Whereas in a complex world, we recognize, and in solutions focus, that change happens all the time. Change doesn't necessarily start from the top. Things aren't necessarily predictable. They are emergent, right? So all those principles apply in complexity as well.
Yep.
So the container, so rather than being a hierarchical system, in a complex world, what you're after is a much more self-organized system rather than a controlled system. And you have to get the balance right? So we want our nuclear plants to be highly controlled. We don't want them to be a self-organized.
Yes, please.
system.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it depends on your organization, but in a world, in something that has to adapt. So, I mean, a nuclear system is a pretty closed system, but in open systems in which we all live, and certainly in which politics and diseases live, viruses live, you have to have a much more adaptable system, which is self-organizing. So the container is the container of the self-organizing system that defines your boundaries. So if you're an organization, your boundaries might be that you have 3 different locations, and that will have an impact on what you do, right? Or your boundaries might be your purpose. So if you make biscuits, you're not, I don't know, you're not felling trees, yeah? So these are, or they might be your values, which I think is an important one in terms of COVID and liberal democracies. But anyway, we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. So that's your container. Yep. And so you think about your organization in terms of those boundaries. Mm-hmm. And if your organization is going to be adaptable, mm-hmm. you want to have those boundaries with them in terms of rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. You want it to have the minimal rules and regulations so it is less bureaucratic. Okay, so that's container. Now let's start with how you see that. So I can only refer to the Australian experience. Mm-hmm. So in Australia, trying to deal with COVID, we're in a mess now with vaccines because we were too successful with the disease. That's an interesting story in itself. But when it came to COVID, we've had 800 deaths all up, and they were all in the first wave, and most of them in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And what the government did in this complex world of fast change, mm-hmm. which other governments will have also done, is come up with, and no one's talking about this, and it's so profoundly good, the minimal rules required for each situation of openness and lockdown. Mm-hmm. So when we were in our heavy lockdown in Melbourne, which we've done 3 times, and the other states are in now, some of them, mm-hmm. we had a container of 4, so the heaviest lockdown was a container of, which you will have also had, I'm sure, 4 rules. You can only go out for the following reasons, which is what I was looking up, right? To buy essential goods and services, mm-hmm. work or study, if you're essential worker or something, if you can't from home, to seek or give care, and to exercise 2 hours a day. And you need to wear a mask and socially distance and wear 1.5 meters here. I know in England it's 2 yards. Anyway, and that's it. They were the only rules of the container.
Right.
And the fact that the rules are minimal mm-hmm. means that as the virus changes, you can adapt faster. So,
okay.
Hmm?
So the thinking being that if you were to have 20 rules, that would reduce your adaptability?
Yes, because one, they're harder to remember. You don't know which is going to apply to what. You want to have as much. I mean, that they were the strictest rules of the lot, but they'd pared them down to 4. And as you opened up, as COVID becomes less, right, then you can exercise for as long as you want in a day. Yeah. You can go to the shops more than once a day. Yeah. You can start going back to work, but you keep those rules minimal because they're understandable. Mm-hmm. And I saw all the stuff in the UK about mm-hmm. all the memes and jokes about rules. And I still have a great fondness, having lived there for 21 years. I follow everything. And it gives you the flexibility
Okay.
that you require. So you want in an organization at any point in your container to have the minimal rules to allow things happen. And it was only when I was thinking about this evening before coming on that I was thinking in terms of family therapy or any of those kinds of things. In a way, you want the same. Now, sometimes you might have a lot of rules, like in the, nuclear station, or a family might have a lot of rules, but the more it puts in, the less degrees of freedom to act. So quite interesting. And I hadn't really thought about, I'd thought about going from taking this into organizations with solutions focus, but I've never thought about how do you reapply their concepts to therapy. So it was this that sort of started me just thinking about that. But I'm assuming with families, it's the same. There are a set of rules. And when you have teenagers whose job it is to throw them out, you've got to decide which things are important.
Yep.
What are the minimal rules that are going to happen? And the rest you decide, okay, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
And the more you have, the less adaptable you are. So that's container. Then you've got, where am I going to next? You've got what's called, very solution focused, what's called transforming exchanges. And that just means a lot of interactions.
Okay.
Now, it's called transforming exchanges because in complexity, it might mean exchanges of money, or it might mean exchanges of information across a system, digital systems. But it's easiest, and because people are the hardest in terms of this, I like to think about it in terms of people. And this is and the transforming exchanges, which is, I think, even when people have flattened their idea of organizations, this one more will be that you work with whoever you need to work with in an organization and an outside of the organization to achieve the outcome as quickly as possible. Whereas if you do this, you never do. So that one's pretty self-evident. But where, for me, in COVID, it became totally fascinating is that the government set in the most severe lockdown, doesn't matter which, but let's just take that example, 4 rules, and then totally trusted the population to do their transforming exchanges, to go around their business. And if you think top down of what happens in a city and how many people are walking where, and it is all totally self-organized, just totally trusted the population that they would get on with it in a way that worked inside the container to achieve the ends. And by and large, isn't that mind-boggling?
Yeah.
And that's true of every society.
Absolutely.
Rules, and then they completely trust us to get on with it.
Yeah.
And our societies just get on with it, and we keep, by and large, maybe 10% don't, but it doesn't really matter. That because it doesn't really affect anything, right? So by and large, we keep 1.5 meters distance, and we wear our masks, and we do whatever we need to do, and we do our 2 hours exercise and don't go beyond, and we make sure we all work around each other in the supermarket and whatever, and it works for entire societies. The whole social fabric of the society is maintained.
And I can see why or how the solution-focused ideas fit in with this beautifully. It is trusting that people know what works.
Exactly.
And will act accordingly. And I'm fascinated by you telling this, because I often talk about the same thing. You need to establish what are your boundaries. And I'm enjoying the word container. I'm going to think about that. What are the boundaries? What are the limits of within which you operate? And they are rules. They can be laws. They can be, and within that comes freedom to go about it as you think fit.
As we know when we bring up our children.
Lovely.
So we give them freedom by giving them boundaries.
Precisely. And it's often forgotten.
The action is in the interaction. It's solution focused.
Yeah.
So you've got that. And to me, it is, I know our societies work, but in this kind of situation, you don't know whether your society is going to work. and how people are going to respond. And so I think it's just, everyone takes it for granted, but for me, it's astonishing.
Okay.
We all just go about our business and do it.
I never actually thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's Olsen and Owen who made me think of it like this.
Mark, what do you think so far? Before Carey goes on to the third point.
It's very interesting. What I'm hearing about this container, about the boundaries, as Pout is calling it, I think Australia was stricter than we have here in the Netherlands, because we didn't have this lockdown as in other countries.
Yeah.
And I think the consequence of that was being in a society that is really loving the freedoms they have. You know, we Dutch, we don't like to be contained.
Yeah.
But because of having less strict lockdowns, I think we, when things got a bit worse, more rules came about. Like you cannot fit people in a home, more than 2 people, and things like that.
Yeah, so the container has permeable boundaries, which change according to purpose. So in the work I did in Highways England, they used to have Employee of the Month, and this is all published, and it was kept quiet, and the reasons why someone was chosen were never given. And they were moving to a change with the work that we did together, which was in a particular direction with a particular purpose, and needed them to operate with more in a self-organizing system. And so they publicized, they took this award, explained what the principles will now be, and said, we will now reward the people who move to this container.
Yes. Oh, yep. That's another beautiful application. Okay, define the container and it will guide change. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and that absolutely. Wow. That is how we used it. And we also had an example where they had a, oh God, what's the term? An engineering control system. I don't know, I wrote it somewhere. But basically it's a project control, a project control system, right? Highways England had a project control system. And they had to change very quickly. Do you remember, I don't know, you might remember, Aish, was it that in 2014 why would you remember this? It's silly government stuff. They basically put highways, it was the Highways Agency. They were changed.
Never know.
They were changed to Highways England. They were made arm's length from the government, given a bunch of money and told perform. And to drive the north, and there were major road projects to build the economy. Look at what happens. But anyway, and it was through that. So they had to work fast, which is why we actually did this work. So they previously had this project control framework, and the leadership team realized there's no way they were going to get stuff done in time with their old project control framework. That was their container for how they did a project. So they basically told the staff they had to come up with something else that was still robust in terms of risk. And people would come back with ideas and they'd send them away again. And send them away again and send them away again until they came back with something that did the trick and was still robust and looked after risk. So they changed. And what happened was that then became the framework for the whole organization. So that was also looking at a difference that worked, which we'll get to. Yeah. But that then became the container for the organization of how you run a project. But in that process, while they were sending people away again to rethink, through that container, they were giving new messages of you have freedom to do things in new ways. So they were changing the cultural container at the same time. Really interesting stuff. So the third factor, which is so solution focused, but solution focused adds so much to this, is called significant differences.
Yeah.
So that when you are working rapidly and need to have an adaptable organization, you need to continuously focus, it's very self-evident to us, on the differences that are coming along and emerging internally and externally that will help you or hinder you in deciding what to do about them. Yeah. So for us, that's really obvious. But the beauty of solution focused in this is that solution focused teaches you that difference is positive. Whereas if you look at a traditional organization, the idea is to have no conflict and for everyone to quickly agree on something because we all feel more comfortable. Yeah, that's how a traditional organization works. And of course, it means you don't notice differences, and organizations aren't trained to notice differences because we all have to come to some common agreement and then get on with it. So complexity recognizes the value of difference in change, so you've got more up your sleeve. But where I think solutions focus adds something so powerful is the way it infuses positivity into difference. That we love difference. We want it. And that we can explain to people why we cherish difference. Because it gives you so many more options.
Okay.
COVID example? Go on, Pat.
Well, I was just thinking that it's escaping me now. It's the constantly asking about how you note. It's in the noticing as well. Constantly asking about how we notice difference. That you make me think that enhances change with an enormous factor, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Instead of just accepting them, okay, apparently this worked, and then forgetting about and going about your business. But no, really emphasizing that.
Yeah.
What difference have you noticed, and how did it show, and what else has changed? Is where you sort of reaffirm the change and make it a more constant factor in your organization. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the COVID example?
Yes, please.
The COVID example is that so in this complexity that we have the container of how many rules or we do or don't need in any society. We have the trusted transforming exchanges of people going out their business, which is the one that still bowls me over the most. And then we have ways, and it's perfect what you said, Pat, ways of noticing difference. And certainly in Australia, that comes through our testing regime. So 20,000 people, like today in Sydney, 60,000 people got tested. And, we caught up very quickly in being able to contact trace, right? And through that, or one case comes up because they've been tested or they go to the doctor or whatever they do. And through that, noticing of differences of what's happening to the virus, like now Delta, so we close down faster or we do things different, we then change our container of rules.
Okay.
And so we're always constantly using the differences in the virus to work out how to work in complexity.
I like how you also combine this whole change theory with actually measuring what's happening.
Yeah.
Making change palpable, scientific.
Yeah, so if the numbers are increasing or decreasing, we open up or we don't open up. We let people go shopping, we don't let them go shopping, whatever it is we do. So it's a magnificent example when something is so rife in society of having to work with complexity. And what I love about the Olsen and Ouyang stuff is that it works. Right. It works.
Okay.
So that's what's been... So every time I see something on television, I sort of think about it through those lenses. Because if it works in that, it can work anywhere. And I mean, beautiful things in complexity about transforming exchanges. So in complexity, your role as a leader is to bring people together, but then not control what they do. Leave it to them to work it out. And the differences in society. So, our container, and it's interesting what you said, Matt, because our container in all our societies anyway are liberal democracies. So in Australia, we have the problem now that because of the rare idea of getting a blood clot, people aren't getting vaccinated, and they're saying, well, we don't have COVID anyway. And this, I mean, it's, you know, in some ways, it's, well, one, it's ridiculous and just a personal opinion there. And two, I've been vaccinated. And two, it means you can never open your border, right? It's just stupid. But anyway, that's where we are. So it's quite interesting watching the government try to handle this, because you start to realise that one of the values of our container in our Australian society is a liberal democracy. What does that mean? It means you can't force people to have vaccines. Yep. You can force frontline workers because the society would agree with that. That would be reasonable in our container to say that if you are working in aged care, you must have the jab or you don't work in aged care.
I was thinking, Carey,
interesting.
It's fascinating. And knowing you have a gazillion thoughts about how you are going to take this into your work under your Change with Ease flag. And I'm just curious about, could you tell us a little bit about the ideas that you have? How is this going to affect your work in the future?
I just think it's the work I want to do. It's not here. It's not here. It's certainly not with Solutions Focus. Well, I don't think it's here, but it's not here, because what you have here is everyone talks about agile, and it's become so ubiquitous, it's become meaningless. And same with the word complexity, I think. So what I want to, and because this is a very simple model, and because Solutions Focus enhances it so much. So when I worked with, I pulled this quote just in case. So when I worked with the manager at Highways England, we started with the questions around, imagine he was walking around his staff in 6 months' time, and they were 10 on a scale of 0 to 10 in making this change. What would he notice? So I went straight for the interaction amongst the staff. And then I said, imagine you're walking around the road network. And from that, so I combine it for organisations with critical success factors. So do you know about INSEAD's? Yes, strategy canvas. Yep. So strategy canvas is basically a graph where the y-axis is 0 to 10, very nice for us, and the x-axis is the critical success factors you need for your organisation, right?
Yep.
So you do the vision, and then out of that, and this is where it's so wonderful, Solutions Focus, because as soon as you do a vision through a solution-focused way, getting them to describe what better would look like, the critical success factors just fall out.
Exactly. Yeah.
In a way that they never do in normal organisational change, because of course they're working from the present to the future. So you have these wonderful critical success factors. So I will take it to organisations with that, whether it's a team, well, that's at a strategic level. At a team, you might do it somewhat differently, or you can do it in individual coaching, but bring the model of the way to think. Because one of the things, it was a guy called Jeremy I worked with. One of the things, before we started the work, we'd had a coffee, and I told him about complexity and said, change doesn't start at the top. Nothing's predictable. Gave him some basic complexity principles. I think I wrote down the ones I gave him. Yeah, change doesn't start at the top. Prediction's not possible. Efficiency doesn't come from control. And he said it freed him up.
Yeah.
Freed him up. He knew already that he did not want to do the traditional thing of we start at the top with the plan and then we dissect it with everyone. And he was already dying with boredom.
Too much hard work.
Too much hard work and just deathly way of achieving nothing.
Yep.
And you're going to achieve something. It's not a good way to die. Anyway, so he knew he already wanted something else. And I told him those things, and he said, oh, well, then we may as well just start, right? And I thought, absolutely brilliant. And then you add Solutions Focus, and I have to find this quote because I absolutely loved it from him, of, you're walking around and you're seeing all the interactions between people and the difference that makes. And he said, I found it.
Oh, great.
It's really interesting to imagine walking around, seeing the staff in 6 months' time and describing what would you see imagining what good would look like, how the team would be. He was a very quick learner.
Wow.
Most importantly, from these exercises, we discovered that there was a lot we thought we could do, which we hadn't expected. And we acted on it. Normally, you think you are prevented from doing things, but we just started to do stuff. So I sort of gave them the idea of a jigsaw, that when you do a jigsaw, you might just do the frame, but you don't then do the second row and the third row. You just find the bits that already work and plonk them in.
Oh, I like that one.
After. Yeah, I often use a jigsaw as an explanation. You do solutions focused in organisations, although you need a jigsaw that constantly changes. But the concept's there. And they just started doing stuff.
That's brilliant.
So it just works. The two ideas work so well together, complexity, and then you add this and the container worthy 5 what have they called? What I just said, the factors, the critical success factors that they had to focus on. And then they even pared them down, because one of the things you realize about a container is if you distribute your energy in too many places, you get nothing done. You can't actually have a container that enables you to self-organize, which was one of the British problems. I think what happened with Britain and COVID, they were so dispersed and the messaging was so contradictory, which we're getting a bit of now as well. You need a container for the system to self-organize, for the people to trust people to go and do what was right. But if you have someone going up to Scotland and pretending he's getting his eyes tested or whatever it is, people don't trust.
The problem here is that, sorry, the noise has calmed down a bit here. The problem in the UK is that each container has a container, which then has another container.
Like Pandora's box, really.
It really is Pandora's box. Right, sorry, I'm going to mute myself again because I started.
Yeah, okay. But the Netherlands, you did things according to your values, and that's part of
we did lose track a little bit on the way. I think again, a personal opinion, because the clarity of what the container was got sort of muddled. And then they got back to a system where, we need to be clear about how we're going to scale down. So they're working around this, but it's a very clear model. In the meantime, we're getting signals by Asia that we're nearing the end of the hour, and Mark is having trouble with background noise because of building works, and he was wanting, and Asia.
No. Is it Mark or is it you as well, Mark?
Oh, is it you?
No, it's just me. It's just me. They're changing the roof. And every now and then you can hear bang, 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 bang. And I'm like, oh.
Good, you have a roof. That's part of your container.
Very important. So instead of trying to work out who's going to ask you the last question, could I ask you, Carey, what would you like the last question to be that we were to ask you?
Oh, I just want to know how everyone is and if everyone feels safe, and I'd rather do that.
Okay.
In this world at the moment, and how life is for you all.
Right. Aisha, over to you.
You all.
I'm all right. Thank you, Carey, for asking. I'm thinking, is it going to start again, the noise? Life at FBS at the moment is wonderful. This is the 87th FBS Chat. Congratulations, Carey. So everything's going really, really well. And it's always lovely to see you guys. It really is. And I'm amongst good friends here.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
Yeah, it's lovely. What about you, Mark?
Well, life has changed the past year or so. At the moment, I'm working in this small organization with these 2 municipalities working together, and it's so problem focused, and it's a chaos. Actually, it's really a chaos. People are leaving. I'm coming in. They hired me in for a project, and then my colleagues there telling me why they are leaving this organization. So, and they say, okay, why I'm here? So I was wondering, because the model you were talking about, Carey, is really fascinating. And you also said, I'm also noticing that when I'm going into working into organizations, then this problem-focused tension is difficult to work with. So how can you actually use this model if you go into these organizations where things are not that easy to work with?
Well, you always need people who want to work that way, and in that I have to refer to the wonderful Michelle Orr in Melbourne, who works in crisis, people who have been suicidal, and so she's working in psychiatry and with a lot of people who work in problem-focused ways. And you can't just walk in and say, let's do this, because, of course, it will create resistance. And she's been working for 10 years. And in the last 2 weeks, I participated in a training by Chris with her organisation that had over 60 people attending. So it can take, it's fantastic, yeah, but it can take time. So no, I think if you go into an organisation, you just have to quietly do things and see if people become interested, because of course if you force, it will never work. The advantage of coming in as a consultant is that you find you have the sponsor, or you look for the right sponsor, or you don't go into that organization. You've got to find the right people, or who have enough interest. I think that's true for any kind of change. So yeah, that means in consultancy, I can only work with certain organizations who are curious enough to try some of the craziness we all do. You've got to find the right people. There'd be lots of organizations who would never work with me. I would never work with me, Groucho Marx. Anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's a matter of quietly. Although, I mean, you can test the water and see what response you get. I have an idea. And you're drowning, you get wet. What happens?
I'm always telling my colleagues and others that I'm wondering what I see. I'm not saying it's a problem or this, that. I said, well, this is different. How did it come about? Then somebody...
you do guerrilla SF, as in GUERILLA.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do a lot of guerrilla
Absolutely.
SF, and some of it sticks.
Yeah, you'll see what's going to happen, and hopefully I will be happy at the end.
Hopefully. Yeah. Oh, I wish you well with it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So far, so good.
Where in the Netherlands do you live?
I live in actually the center, in the big city of Utrecht.
Ah, okay.
Actually, at the moment, it's the capital of Holland, of course. But
of course it is.
I have been to Utrecht.
There you go.
With all the beautiful canals and
buildings. Absolutely gorgeous.
And we're actually running all the time, So.
Okay. Well, Aisha's experiencing building sound troubles again. So she's asked me to sort of wrap up as we're getting a little bit over the hour even. And on behalf of Aisha and FBS, it's just a big thank you to you, Carey. It was wonderful talking to you and all your great insights of how you explain what's going on with COVID, with new theories, attaching SF, and it'll keep me thinking for quite a while. And would love to.
When we can move again, Pat, you're going to just have to fly to Melbourne, live with us for a bit.
Absolutely, will do. Yes. My first goal, by the way, is flying to the UK. I'd love to have the border restrictions being stopped, because I want to visit my grandchild.
Oh,
That's the first goal in COVID terms. Yeah. But it was
beautiful.
great seeing you, and just thankful for all this technology that we do get to be together.
Yeah,
And,
I've had the best fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to my bits of insanity. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lovely talking to
care.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.